Thank you very much for tuning back in again. Here's the next part of the screencast for the reading for the textbook on the Han dynasties in China. A highly structured society. Chinese society under the Han dynasty was highly structured. And just as the Han emperors tried to control the people that they conquered, they exerted vast control over the Chinese themselves. Because the Chinese believed their emperor to have divine authority, they accepted this exercise of power. He was the link between heaven and earth, and if the emperor did his job well, China had peace and prosperity for many years. If he failed, the heavens showed their displeasure with earthquakes, floods, and famines. However, the emperor did not rule alone. Structures of Han government. The Chinese emperor relied on a complex bureaucracy to help him rule. Running the bureaucracy and maintaining the imperial army was expensive. To raise money, the government levied taxes like the farmers did in India. Chinese peasants owed part of the yearly crops to the government. Merchants also paid taxes too. Besides taxes, the peasants owed the governments a month's worth of labor or military service every year. With this source of labor, the Han emperors built roads and dug canals and irrigation ditches. The emperors also filled the ranks of China's vast armies and expanded the Great Wall, which stretched across the northern frontier. Confucianism and the road to success. So Wudi's government employed more than 130,000 people. The bureaucracy included 18 different ranks of civil service jobs, which were government jobs that civilians obtained by taking examinations. At times, Chinese emperors rewarded loyal followers with government posts. However, another way to fill government posts evolved under the Han. This method involved testing applicants' knowledge of Confucianism, the teachings of Confucius, who had lived 400 years before. The early Han emperors had employed some Confucian scholars as court advisors, but it was Wu Di who began actively to favor them. Confucius had taught that gentlemen should practice reverence or respect, generosity, truthfulness, diligence, industriousness, and kindness. And because these were exactly the qualities he wanted his government officials to have, Wu Di set up a school where hopeful job applicants from all over China could come to study Confucius's works. After their studies, job applicants took formal examinations in history, law, literature, and Confucianism. In theory, anyone could take the exams, and in practice, few peasants could afford to educate their sons. So only sons of wealthy landowners had a chance at government career. In spite of this flaw, the civil service system began by Wu Di worked so efficiently that it continued in China until 1912. Let's move on to the next section here about Han technology, commerce, and culture. The 400 years of Han rule saw not only improvements in education, but also great advances in Chinese technology and culture. In addition, the centralized government began to exert more control over commerce and manufacturing together. Technology revolutionizes Chinese life. Advances in technology influenced all aspects of Chinese life, and paper was invented in AD 105, and before that, books were usually written on silk. But paper was cheaper, and so books became more readily available. This helped spread education in China, and the invention of paper also affected Chinese government. Formerly, all government documents had been recorded on strips of wood. Paper was much more convenient to use for record keeping, so Chinese bureaucracy expanded. Another technological advance was the collar harness for horses, and this invention allowed horses to pull much heavier loads than did the harness being used in Europe at the time. The Chinese perfected a plow that was more efficient because it had two blades, and they also improved iron tools, invented the wheelbarrow, and began to use water mills to grind grain. Agriculture versus commerce. So during the Han Dynasty, the population of China swelled to 60 million, and because there were so many people to feed, Confucian scholars and ordinary Chinese people considered agriculture the most important and honored occupation. An imperial edict written in 167 BC stated the philosophy quite plainly. Agriculture is the foundation of the world. No duty is greater, and now if anyone personally follows this pursuit diligently, he has yet to pay the impositions of the land tax and the tax on produce. Let there be abolished the land tax and the tax on produce levied upon the cultivated fields. So although the same decree dismissed commerce as the least important occupation, manufacturing and commerce were actually very important to the Han Empire. The government established monopolies of the mining of salt, the forging of iron, the mining of coins, and the brewing of alcohol. A monopoly occurs when a group has exclusive control over the production and distribution of certain goods. So for a time, the government also ran huge silk mills, competing with private silk weavers in making this luxurious cloth. As contact with people from other lands increased, the Chinese realized how valuable their silk was as an item of trade. Because of this, the techniques of silk production became a closely guarded state secret, and spurred by the worldwide demand for silk, Chinese commerce expanded along the Silk Roads to most of Asia, through India, and all the way to Rome. Please proceed to the final section here of the screencast recording for the textbook reading and key concept questions.